Hello! I don't know why I'm doing this. This is the second SkyBlog thing for our patrons. This sort of video interview blog, which is okay. Yeah, I'm not the best at doing video blogs. It's not really in my nature. I'm definitely more of a radio guy, but yeah, you know, it's sort of the new thing we're doing now, so we might as well try it. I'll probably put another screwy filter or something on here just to distract it, because yeah, it's more fun that way. Anyway, I am actually kind of stuck in the middle of Confession 6 production, as sometimes happens, because as much as I try to make it so that I work as many of the cogs as possible, you know, the series was almost totally self-contained from the beginning, and that was just because it was sort of like an alternate proposal kind of thing. So it's like right now what's killing me the most, though, is that I am literally waiting on one sentence, one line from one person, and it's like, depending on the script, depending on the point in the script, I'll edit around things at the last minute. Like, if someone, like, messes up a preposition or something, it doesn't matter too much, because it actually is more genuine, because an actual person being interviewed would be a little bit off the cuff, or say something by mistake. Like, if you're talking about, I don't know, what's an example? But anyway, so some little things can be cut around, and I do that, just let it be whatever, which is actually one of the reasons I don't release the scripts until the end anyway, is because you'd see all those little weird differences if you, like, read through it line by line, I guess. I'm not sure how many people would actually do that or care, but no, I'll probably save all the scripts for the very end and release them in, like, a whole package kind of thing for like a box set. But yeah, so I'm waiting on that one line, and it's literally the last line of audio I think I need. Everything else is essentially finalized and in place, and it's like, as soon as I get that last line, then I can edit it all together. Oh, I mean, it's edited all together, but it's like, once I get that last line and I can correct for a few silences and things like that I found when I was going through my demo listen. Because my approach when I'm doing the final testing, I might have mentioned this before, but it's like, I'll just put it on my big room speakers. I've got, like, these, same as in here, these, like, Logitech-looking things, surround sound speakers, on here and in my living room, and I'll play through those while I'm playing Fallout, and Fallout is muted. So that way it's very, let's see if the light is catching it. The light is so weird in this room, with this camera. Let's see here. I think it's focused on the lamps. Dang it. There we go. A little bit better. Anyway, so, yeah, I'll listen through the whole thing while playing, so, like, that's what I was doing yesterday. My Friday off. I spent 4 or 5 hours listening through it all while I was messing around in the Vault 88 thing. Build your own vault, which is, it's okay. I haven't really done much with it. It's, I'm not sure how much I'll pursue the Vault experiments further either, because Curie didn't like that, so it's just another tricky thing, doing that. And it's funny, that was actually the first playthrough where I cited Railroad, which, the very first time I cited Institute, which I thought was the logical choice. But, yeah, whatever, I did Railroad and freed all the synths and stuff. It's like, I don't know. It kind of brings, like, an essential problem for the Institute, which is, if you want just robot slaves, then have just, like, you know, make them just make them robots, you know, and have their AI be limited. It's like, if they're really on something approaching sentience, then just, like, shave back a little bit. So, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those age-old questions about AI where it's like, at what level of intelligence would it then become self-perpetuating, essentially, where it's like, okay, now it's like growing brain cells and becoming smarter and then self-aware and thinking and, you know, complex thought and stuff. And I'm like, I just don't buy it. I've had that position a long time. Like, you hear in the news all the doomsday people, like, frickin', what's his name? The other South African, Elon Musk, talking about AI and about, like, oh, AI is scary and it's gonna be self-aware and Skynet, you know, I have no mouth but I must scream. And it's like, no, if AI ever did become a real threat to humanity, it would be in the sense of something like robot police system run amok. Like, say, and without referencing Chappie directly, but say he had like a RoboCop scenario where the entire police force of a city are all robots, and then you get a bug in the computer where it's like, instead of just targeting like certain like criminal elements, like, you know, they identify the smell of drugs or something stupid, they target all humans by mistake. Like, all the qualifiers drop, so they just target all humans. That is where AI becomes a threat, which is not complex intelligence or thinking. It's a broken machine. It's like, you know, having a runaway heat-seeking missile, like following your own jet that you might have fired. It's like, I don't know. I've never bought into the idea of like computer evolution, you know? That they say that's the thing of quantum computing too. It's like, once it breaks into the quantum computing realm, then the computers become self-perpetuating and self-building, and they evolve within this new sphere of technology, and I'm like, man, we haven't even found, like, silicon-based life forms, or argon-based, or anything like that yet. It's like, as far as we know, everything is dependent on a very established carbon-oxygen-type system. And I'm like, I'm just not buying it. I think a lot of these people have read too much sci-fi, to be honest. They buy their own hype a little bit too much, so I don't know. That's my opinion. I'm a little bit of a skeptic in that sense, in that it's like, if we see real, like I don't know, and even defining sentience is like such a complicated issue. It's like, where does the knowledge begin? Where does it, like, what you call intelligence begin, or sentience begin? And I don't know how I would fully define that either, but I'm not prepared to give it to machines for the most part. So anyway, long story short, that's why I cited Institute initially, because of that. And it's like, the other thing too was, even if they are sentient, they are still their robots that they built. It's like, I don't know, if you wanted to, like, if they wanted to escape the Institute by, like, downloading their brains onto, like, a terminal or a server farm, that's one thing. But it's like, it is still, like, their robots. And, I don't know. And then you nuke the Institute, like, literally, and, okay, no more robots. And you've got these synths that are, I guess, essentially finite, right? I don't think they can breed or self-perpetuate in that way. So I don't know, unless it's, like, fully synthetic on the molecular level, which I don't know enough about the Fallout lore to know if that's how it works. I feel like it's also one of those things of, we're running into technological limitations. Like, the Fallout world makes sense to certain degrees of, like, I think what it was explained is that in the Fallout universe, they never discovered the transistor. So they couldn't minimalize, like, digital capacity down to, like, microchip levels and stuff. So realistically, in that scenario, they couldn't build, like, complex, like, thinking machines anyway, like even the Mr. Handys, or, like, you know, robotic AIs and stuff. Not necessarily, anyway. I don't know. It's why all the computers are still, you know, 8-bit, like, compy screens, or whatever they're called. It's yeah, it's something a little bit silly. But of course, I love Curie in Fallout 4, so I do whatever keeps her happy. It's like put off on the frickin' Nuka World, or you know. Then when I had basically what was with the Institute playthrough is that I already won with the Institute before even discovering Curie. So I think that's what sort of like closed my problem on that sense. But this time I played my modded playthrough and I avoided the main storyline for as long as I could, for a while anyway, and so I already had her, and of course she was like, "Oh, I miss you," so okay, I sided Railroad, and that was fine, I guess. But yeah, it was interesting seeing all the some of those like post scenes, like when the guy, I forget his name, the Institute insider guy who helps the I almost said Sentinel droids. Helps the synths escape. Then he kills himself after you kill the Institute, because that's like his whole family and life, and he actually ultimately did believe in the mission of the Institute. He just thought the AI, or the sentient robots, should have a chance to be free if they really want to. And yeah, it's one of those things of like, that's one thing I wanted to do in my Institute playthrough, was see, could you reform it a little bit on the inside? Like, if they became sufficiently sentient, could you go through a process of, like, emancipation, I guess, for, you know, just ring all the you know, buzzwords and all the bells there. So, yeah, it was interesting. It's one of those things I was just like, when you're finishing through the playthrough, that you think about as I'm listening to make sure that the audio was all good. Because usually in that last listen, that last check on the Confessions episodes, I'm mainly looking for things like repeated words, because I know my very original Confessions 1 post had that problem, which is it repeated the, what was that? It repeated the one of the lines and everyone caught it. And then they deleted that video anyway, so those comments are lost, and I was able to correct it before reposting it. But, yeah, so it's mostly repeated lines or gaps of silences, because I edit it where, you know, it just, you know, section by section as you're going. So the last sentence only has to sound good relative to the first sentence, unless you're talking about, like, overall driven pacing, which usually the actor accounts for themselves. So it's like, because, of course, I do a demo of all of these before the actor even starts, or actress, where it's like, okay, an action scene, so they pick up the pace a little bit. You know, we're running down a hallway, and then we had to make a left and pull out our gun and shoot the thing, and then keep running and so, or then you have, like, the very plotting, like description scenes, like, you entered the room, and there's a green mist in the air, and you hear the sound of the machine whirring quietly in one corner. So, a lot of that, like, dramatic pacing, they usually do themselves. Sometimes I'll correct it a little bit, but that's usually fine. It's just picking the right takes, or getting retakes and splicing them in, or in certain cases where if they totally miss one single line, but it's a line that I really do need, I can't cut around it or fill it in with something else, then it's like, okay, I'm waiting for literally one sentence and hoping that it arrives at some point, because it's like, I can't have the finalized audio of the episode. Oh yeah, episode. It's so big it doesn't feel like just an episode. It's I can't finalize the audio of it until it's until I have that last line. And because of that, I can't put it onto the timeline of the video render and line up all the little, like, hints and the video, like, pacing things I do, too. So it's like, it's just getting caught at a bottleneck like that drives me crazy. So, anyway, that's what I'm waiting on now as I'm talking to you, people, bronies of the future. So, it should be interesting. Yeah, I hope everyone enjoys this story. You probably might have heard it by now, whenever this gets released. I don't know. It's like our monthly thing, so maybe that won't be until next month, or maybe it would be this month, or something. So I won't go into anything spoilery in case you do hear it before then, but no, I was really happy with this episode. It was long, but it involves so many little facets that I think it makes the story worth it, and I really try to pull out a lot of interesting, deep lore for everything in it that I'll definitely keep on building off of for the story as a whole, because getting closer to the end now. It's going to be interesting. Okay, so I'm back from a restroom break, which means it's time for a new topic, because I don't even remember what I was recording with the last video. It's like, finally, I have a cord for my phone to my computer, so I don't have to do a goofy, like, transmit thing like what happened with the demo video that I'd sort of fix with the way it was recording. I live streamed that directly to YouTube as a hidden video, and then I downloaded it from YouTube, and I didn't know that my Wi-Fi was starting to go screwy, which is a problem I discovered later on why it was going screwy, and then fixed. I had to call frickin' Comcast, and they had to come out and screw with some wires, so at least it's fixed, hopefully, for now. But no, now we need to cover a much more important topic, and that is Sunset Shimmer. First of all, I don't know why people call her bacon hair, okay? Like, I get it. Yeah, I get it in the broadest sense, but it's like, bacon isn't yellow. Like, you shouldn't see any, like, yellow in your bacon. Unless it's some kind of weird, like, texture or like, I don't know. I would say Canadian bacon, but we all know Canadian bacon's just ham, and they wanted to just call it something different, because, well, Americans have their bacon, we gotta have our bacon. It's ham. But it's not bacon hair. It's ketchup and mustard. That was always my position from the beginning, because it is so clearly ketchup and mustard. I gotta make sure I put some kind of visual there to make that point. So, yeah, and for one of the best characters with the best hair in the series, you got to get that right, because it's very important. Now, it's interesting too, is Sunset Shimmer's color scheme is actually very, very borderline. I almost said dangerous. This is like in artistic terms. It's very like they tread very carefully in how they designed her, because when you've got such strong colors like red and yellow, you can very, very quickly lose control of them, and they can get really ugly, especially clashing with other colors. But between her eyes and the tops that she usually wears, they were able to find just the right color of, like, seafoam green. Like literally this, like, perfect sort of, like, aqua seafoam looking green that it's just perfect. It's literally like they did some kind of very intensive color wheel study to be like, okay, what's the most matching thing we can find, and that's what they picked for her eyes, and then they essentially added the complement of that to the rest of the middle section. And then, you know, once you're in seafoam territory, then you can transfer into normal blue jeans or black boots, or what did she have in the original movie was the skirt, right? And yeah, the skirt was like orangish. That was yeah, that was actually much stronger colors when she had the purple top and the skirt. So, yeah, the greenish seafoam top, that was a good addition for them to switch over to. And, yeah, these things matter. It's very, it's very important to her character. But it kind of is, though. I mean, picture, like, all of her, except then you've got, what's an example of bad coloring? What's some generic hated Phantom OC I can put there? I don't know. I remember back in the day when I actually paid attention to the fandom creations and not just focused on getting confessions done as quickly as possible. I always bitched about people who had very what's the word? Standard colorations of their characters, like, oh yeah, you have a horse that is some shade of beige, and they have some shade of very standard hair, like, what is it, like black or brown or something like that. And the two standouts for me are, I'm not sure if they're married yet, but it's Mando Pony and Sibsy. They both had just the most plain character colorings, in my opinion. And it's like, I don't know, you've got the entire rainbow at your disposal, and you give them, like, standard human colorings. It's like, it's so boring. That's why, way back when, of course I was a fresh brony at that point, but it's like, I'm gonna design my character, it's gonna be super colorful and exciting! So, of course, I duplicate my favorite color, blue, and then my common highlight color, yellow, and, yeah, and then I found a background sort of two-tone gradient pattern that I use for a lot of, profile pictures and stuff, just because they're good complementary colors. And, yeah, you know, because that's fun, because they're the magic horses. You don't need to stick with plain, you know, walking monkey colors. It's like, yeah, that's boring. Yeah, shades of brown and brown. No, we're going to have more color, because we can, and it's awesome. So, that's why, for my character, I went with that coloring, for sure. I wanted it to be fun, because it's, I mean, the coloring matters for how favorite the character is. It's just like, of course, what of the personality matters too, but it's like Lyra has objectively better coloring and design than Bonbon. Bonbon is just so, I almost want to say frumpy, but it's not quite the word, but it's just so, like, plain, or, like, I really think of, like my grandmother's candy dish when I look like Bonbon, and it's just, like, that's not the thought of, like, an interesting character for me. Like, when I look at Lyra, and you see, or I see, anyway, all the Valley girls I went to high school with, you know, that same sort of, like, ooh, bubbly energy, and, with just enough of that, you know, that surfer beach chic that's so stereotypically Californian now. And, yeah, but of course, it's like the minty coloring and the sort of soft white, like dual tones in the hair, that's cool coloring. It makes her a neat character. So then, when they really start hitting, like, home runs, like, then you've got Starlight Glimmer, which is actually almost like a Twilight model with better coloring. Like, you know, you've got much more complementary tones in her scheme, too, than just plain Twilight. And then fun fan favorites like Trixie, and, yeah, and then you've just got, like, you've got too many waifus, or of course, Princess Ember. It's like, it's too many waifus. So what do you do with all this? You build a harem, that's what you do with all this. No, it's, yeah, so that's one thing that, of course, now, I'm doing all I can to make sure these videos aren't just like DWK reaction videos, essentially, like my own follow-up conversation to that. I gotta get in a podcast with him sometime. We have frickin' James Vermont in, who has some vague connection to him now, and I'm like, you gotta get him on a podcast at some point. So anyway, but it is true that coloring plays a big part into how best the pony is. So all of those I listed, for instance, are definitely high up there. And even among the main six, they've all fallen off for me. You know, it's like, you know, Rainbow Dash, she's so stereotypical. And then you've got Fluttershy, which is annoying, and Pinky, annoying, and, yeah, of the main six, it's definitely still Rarity and Applejack. They're at the top, just sort of like floating in duality. Just because I like AJ, because as like someone I would want to, of course, all of these are thinking like in terms of someone you'd actually want to live with, like someone you would have to tolerate long term. And I know long term with Pinky, I'd probably overdose. Fluttershy, I would kill myself, and then. Yeah, Rainbow Dash would be annoying. She seems like the kind of person where it's like she would leave her crap everywhere. This is one reason I didn't have roommates in real life. I mean, I could live with, like, my brother, maybe. And to be honest, that would be tricky, because I have a brother and sister, and both of them are, they take more from another side of personality in our family, so we could do it, but it would be, you know, you'd have that, like, that grazing. We'd have those clashes for sure. Oh my gosh. So this is how I rate it, you know, long-term, like roommateness. And AJ is definitely a character that's more grounded. That's sort of an Earth Pony pun. It's more grounded. She you know, the family, you know, values and the hard work and stuff. And it's like, for one thing, she could take care of your yard, which is great, because I hate dealing with it. Now that I have a yard, now that I'm in a formal house and not an apartment anymore, it's like, ugh, dealing with the yard. Because in California, we're getting out of our regular drought cycle because everyone makes such a big deal. It's like, oh, California's on fire. California's always on fire. That's like a season in California. Oh, it's fire season. It's just, you know, it's the fires. That's how it works. California is a desert that is artificially kept at bay by, like, the frickin' dams and the levee system, the Army Corps of Engineers that built all the waterways that, like, make it habitable, and the Imperial Valley and stuff like that. But no, California's natural state is mostly desert and fires, and then you have the other random extremes scattered about, like mountains and snow and beaches. And Northern California, which has more of the lovely forests and such. So yeah, so fires are natural state in California. But anyways, after a fire season, and then of course we get the El Nino, so then California's all flooded and everything, and dams are breaking. But of course, all the actual normal lawns dried out and died, so my lawn is like 70% crabgrass right now, and it's like, I want to deal with them eventually, but I have all these, all these project stuff that I'm still kind of catching up on because of my 2 months being stuck moving and not being able to do anything. And just some of those nights, I'm sitting there just wanting to rip my computer out, but I know I can't because it's in a storage locker on the other side of town. So it's like, that killed me. It just killed me. So, and then I have a new problem coming up, which is I'm going on literally, like 6 different business trips for work, like overnight stuff. 2 of them are like 3-day affairs, and then then 3 of them are like week-long things. So I'm going to be very busy up until like October or something, when they start dying down a little bit, but we'll see what happens then. Oh, God. So that's part of the reason I'm pushing so hard to get Confession 6 done and out. Besides wanting to hit the anniversary and I guess sort of maintain this, like, 6-month cycle that's been created with it. I want to get it out as soon as possible. So that's going to be great. And because it is almost done as soon as I get this literally 1 line. And I think she just recorded it, because I'm looking at the document right now, because all these are in Google Docs, or sharing it with the actors, and I saw an, what is it, unknown aardvark or something, you know, someone logging in without their account, which is interesting, but yeah, so that could be literally anyone. It could just be one of the actors pointing out a silence gap too, which is expected. I didn't know there were a few more silence gaps than I realized when I was making this, or when I was listening on Friday, because there's a lot of characters in this one. As you will probably tell when you hear it, there's a lot of characters. So there's a lot more bits of like dialogue and some bigger scenes combined together. So usually in those cases, I'm like editing that scene, that chunk of dialogue of those characters, and then I move on. But when I'm editing, there's usually like gaps of silence on both sides where I'm listening to like take 1, take 2, take 3, and then I move it into the block of dialogue. And so sometimes I forget to delete the extra takes on the beginning and end and clear them and then bring them into the length of the actual timeline. So yeah, a couple of those I'm dealing with, and something that it looks like might be getting pointed out here. Let's see if that's one I caught. Right after blah, blah, blah. Section. Yes, that is one I caught, so I will respond back. So, this is part of the process too, is that then once I have a full cut, so to speak, I send it out to all of the actors and actresses, and, you know, make sure, mainly I want them to be happy with their own parts, because, you know, I'd hate for it to come back after the fact where they're like, oh, I hated that take, let me redo it. Because we've had that in the past, where, like, for pretty much all of them, like, a couple of times, like, an actor would be like, oh, let me redo this, I can do that way better. Because, you know, I want them to be proud of it and stuff, too, and really happy with their performance of that character, so, yeah, so we've had them do some retakes where it's like, I thought it was fine, but they wanted to redo it, so, sure, let's splice in an alternate thing. And, yeah, it usually works out better. They do have a more genuine interpretation of it, or whatever. Yeah, so, what were we talking about before this? It's California and fires, and back to that, Best Pony, Applejack. Okay, so, yeah, living with her seems like something definitely more grounded, definitely, you know, I could do, because she is so much more like, I almost said sturdy. That's not quite the word I'm going for, but yeah, like, definitely more like, down to earth. So yeah, that would be great, except for chores. Like, if she then becomes, you know, chores imperialist, then I would have to pull rank and be like, I'm taller, and I you know, bipedal privilege. So, oh my god. No, I do enough of a day job. I don't need to come home and do frickin' yard work and stuff. It's like, if I can contract out parts of my life that other people can do, I take those opportunities, because this is the most important lesson very few people ever realize. Time is more valuable than money. Like, you hear the expression, time is money. No, no, no. Time is vastly more valuable than money, because it's also diminishing returns. You know, every second of your life is the best second you'll ever have, so to speak. This is sort of in very, like, grandstanding terms. So think about it. If you had a 5-day weekend of total free time to do whatever you want, do you think you'd be able to spend it better and more wisely now, your 20s or 30s, general brony audience, or in your 60s? You know, in your 60s, you're going to be tired. You're going to be more, you know, less energy, less drive than most likely you are now. So it's like, you want to, and there's no guarantee you're going to make it to 60. You could get hit by a car or plane crash or something crazy like that too. So it's like, you want to take advantage of every bit of time you can. Like a job. You know, if you have a job with, like, guaranteed vacation time or guaranteed sick time, use it. You know, you have a doctor's appointment at 3 p.m., take off the rest of the day. You know, don't come back at 4 p.m. and work 1 hour and then go back home. It's like, no, just use it if you've got it. Especially, you know, if it's paid sick leave or paid annual leave. Use it. It's, I don't know, I see that sometimes with people, and they're like, oh, I'm going to save it, and, you know, cash it in at the end. It's like, no, I mean, I'll take a 0.5% cut in my retirement if that means I get, you know, several, like a year and a half worth of free time scattered throughout the beginning of my life. Because, again, there's no guarantee you make it to age 60 or whatever. This is like, that's also how Social Security works, by the way. The Social Security system, when it was set up in the 60s in America, now we're getting local. When it was set up in America, it's essentially like you're betting against your own death, where you put in this money, everyone puts in this money into the big pot, the Social Security Trust Fund, and the dirty secret is they expect, you know, they expect you to use like 5 years of it and then die. And then there's so many people that die before they even use a dime, so that, you know, maintains the fund. That's the variability. Problem is, we're living in the modern age where medicine gets better every day, so everyone's living longer and longer and longer. So instead of that average takeout rate of 5 years, you're getting an average takeout rate of 20 years or 30. I mean, you know, it's great that people can live so long, but the drawback is that then those social services become, it's not like your own personal checking account. It's not like, I think that's more or less how 401ks work, is you put the money into your own private 401k, IRA, whatever, retirement account, and then of course it plays in the market and it gains, you know, money with the stocks or whatever it's like diversified in, or some kind of specific thing you put your money in, like bitcoins, which are now $4 grand. Holy hell, if I had known that, I would have bought some bitcoins back in the day. Yeah, and so you put the money in, and instead of just being a pot that then you run out of, it's a guarantee, you know? So if you retire at 65 and then you live to 105, you get 40 years of Social Security at the sort of agreed upon rate of withdrawal, which is fine, except for when there's not enough money in the trust fund to pull out of, and the fact that they're pulling money out of the trust fund on the side. So that's essentially what, like, a large part of American federal debt is. It's just promised Social Security to be, like, I'll be honest, I don't expect to ever draw Social Security. I think the entire fund is going to capsize before I even get close to touching it. So I'm worrying about my own retirement accounts, my own, you know, savings and equity and physical assets. Because that's the other thing. Stock market, finances, even Bitcoin is all imaginary. There's nothing there. Like, oh, look, this is my stocks. There's nothing there. It's all imaginary. It's all fiat. You want something physical. You want land. Land is really good because that's a scarce, limited, finite resource. That's why land and gold have become like standards of money and wealth. Or in the old days, I mean, you hear the stories, you know, the old stories about like, oh, you know, you traded 10 sheep for like a dowry, you know, to get married. It's like, oh, you know, may I have your daughter's hand? Here's 10 sheep. Because, you know, it's sort of like buying goodwill into the family, you know, it's like putting yourself out there. But those were assets. Those are sheep, you know. They help control weed growth on your land. You breed the sheep and you have a whole herd of sheep, and that's wool, which is very valuable of a resource for human clothing and other textiles like ropes and ship sails, things like that. I mean, that's why silk was such a huge deal in China, or cotton in the U.S. So, yeah, you have to think about what true money is. True physical, finite resources are so important. And it's like, even though we live in an age where it's tricky to do so, I definitely recommend buy a house or a plot of land or something and make use of it. Especially in our economy, it's like, if you can't live there, buy the house and rent it out. Usually you'll make back a net gain because you're going to be getting money for the rent for that house for whoever. Maybe it's a couple that's retired. You know, their kids are gone. They don't want to manage a big house. They sold that and they're spending their money on, you know, yachts or vacations to Hawaii or whatever. And so they just want a little place to stay for their golden years. So they rent from you. And so that's money that's going back into you, a relatively younger person, most likely. And it maintains your physical assets. It's still your house. It's still your property. Now, of course, the caveat in that was the housing crash, and the whole reason for the housing crash was something called subprime loans, which is stupidly complicated. But the bottom line is they promised loans to people they knew couldn't pay them back. I mean, they really just like, it's unfortunate, but it's like, that's what caused it. It's like, yeah, you'll pay us back, probably. So 0 interest for 5 years. Here's your house. And they couldn't. They kind of knew they couldn't. You look at their credit history. That's why they couldn't under normal circumstances. But they allowed for the subprimes to sort of like minimize the risk. But the problem is, when you had too large of a subprime pool of minimal risk, and they all had bad risks, the entire pool was like, it's like throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but all of the bathwater was oil. It's not just the baby. Like, the baby's not even in there anymore. It's just oil. It's just sludge. And so, when so much of that then broke, think of like the bathtub flooding, or like a Breaking Bad reference, the melted drug cartel guy bursts through the bathtub, then the entire house gets covered in it. So that's more or less what happened in the market, and because land is such an important asset, and the housing in general, then a whole bunch of things fell too and corrected that, or those were things invested in the housing market. So this is the kind of tangents you're buying. You know, I hope you enjoy this. This is how all the SkyBlogs go. So, physical assets, and going back to Best Pony, Applejack, or at least she's still mostly Best Pony to me. It's like, yeah, she would be much easier to live with because she would be very frugal in that sense. She would be very smart and practical in that sense. Then you have Rarity, which is sort of like tied now amongst the main characters, and it's like Rarity is also smart and very entrepreneurial. So she has that higher risk. You know, she's more willing to take those chances and take those leaps of faith into, you know, her branch out stores in Manhattan or whatever, Camelot. And it's like, those would be great too. She would be fun too, absolutely, because she is a little bit fluffier, and she'd have the you know, the fine touch to keep everything pretty and working. But yeah, in that scale that I apply to Best Poniness, which is how long can you live with them, I think AJ would still beat out, because long-term Rarity is a little bit frazzly. So I don't know. It's one of those things that, of course, only bronies dwell on. Because it is sort of a thought experiment. It's fun to do, but yeah. And then, of course, you talk about things like Sunset Shimmer or Trixie. I probably couldn't. Trixie, she's very fun, but that would get a little bit old fast. And Starlight Glimmer, Starlight Glimmer and Trixie, they are the right kind of messed up for each other, so that's what is so beautiful about their burgeoning relationship in every way. In that case, I would probably choose Sunset. So then we'd have the Sunset, Rarity, or AJ, like, you know, odd couple, I guess, house. And yeah, I think, even though Sunset is so wonderful, it would be a toss-up between her and AJ for me. AJ is definitely more stable and reliable, but Sunset, she's getting to that stability, but she also has, like, enough of a past where it's like she's a little bit more forgiving. She's a little bit more fun and free-spirited because she's been down a bumpy road before. So that's also a very valuable, like, thing. It's someone who can chill, you know. She can understand, like, mistakes and things like that too. So yeah, under this very complicated set of circumstances I've laid out, I would probably say Sunset is Best Pony then, in that sense. In terms of long-term livability and maximum waifu status and that hair. Going back to bacon hair, which is actually ketchup and mustard hair, it definitely would be Sunset Shimmer for me. So, there you go. That's my my not-so-quick rundown. But going back to markets... No, but going back to physical assets, yeah, you wanna have stuff that's very concrete, and really think about, like, what you value, because that comes in so handy, because time is so valuable. If you have chances where you can have that free time, like you know, a lot of people will take that break between high school and college, and that's a good strategy in some cases, where it's like you want to have that kind of free time to, like, get to know yourself or figure out what you want to do with your life. I mostly had my career pegged by that point, so I went right into college and tried to power through my major, because then I wanted to graduate so I could then do whatever with life. You know, I have my steady career, and then I could screw around in my free time and make ridiculously long pony productions and songs and stuff. And it's like, you know, it's a creative expression, but it is also very, very fulfilling, you know, and that's also key too. It's like, don't have any regrets. Even if, and that's hard to say, of course, but it's like, you always regret the things you don't do more than the things you do. So some risks like that are definitely worth taking. Within certain boundaries, of course. It's like, you don't want to, like, sell everything and go on, like, a magical vacation for a year and then come back and you have nothing. It's like, you do have to be smart about it, but you don't want to be too corporate either. You don't want to spend your life just punching in, you know, day in, day out, like the stereotypical 90s, like Office Space scenario where you hate your job and hate your life, and then you get you get hypnotized, and then you have no cares in the world, and everything else spins out of control. So that's arguably one of the hardest parts about adulthood, is just walking that fine line between necessity and life fulfillment. Yeah, it's the work-life balance, and yeah, that's it's a good thing to figure out. And my own journey was definitely, well, ongoing, but has been definitely one of discovery too. Like, it's like, you make mistakes, but if you learn from them and you learn how to make your own life better, and consequently the lives of those around you better, because that's the other thing too, is a broken car can't pull a trailer, or whatever other fun analogies you wanna come up with. It's like, you can't help anyone else if you aren't even fully functional yourself. And of course, it's like, no one's ever going to be perfect, but it's like, if your life is spiraling out of control, you shouldn't be, like, giving advice to others, for instance, or you're not capable of helping others in that case, if you're not in, like, a stable situation yourself. Like, let's say you have to, like, your friend needs a place to stay for a few months, or a relative or something, but you're, like, kind of transient yourself. You're between houses or between jobs, so it's like, okay, I think my capture reset there. So anyway, it's like, if you do have to help someone, like, stay at your place for a few months, it's like, you want to help them out, but if you don't actually have a place, if you're between jobs, or if you're between houses too, you can't help them. So it's a very, I know it's a very American thing for sure, is like, you want to be you want to be, like, you know, self-reliant. You want to be individual to an extent, where it's like, you're individual enough where you can function on your own, you can move on your own, and then you can help others because you're set right, because you're moving and you're working and you got things figured out to a certain extent. So that's yeah, that's something important too. And maybe yeah, where did this branch from? This did branch from the waifu conversations, but it's like yeah, you know, it's those little life lessons in the show. That's part of what made the series so magical, is all those little life lesson details that actually compounded, and they actually progressed as characters. I think that's the reason the show has come back so strong, is because adding Starlight Glimmer to the show gave you a fresh character to have an arc to grow off of. It's like, think about when they first announced Equestria Girls and how much people were scared or upset about it, or, like, had no idea what to buy about it. And of course, all of us were mad that they cut season 3 in half to sort of accommodate for it. It was so frustrating, but then you had this beautiful Sunset Shimmer arc that became so valuable and so wonderful. And then they realized how well that worked and imported a character like that into the show itself. Because it's like, I enjoyed a few episodes of season 3. I liked the ending more than a lot of other people did. Then season 4 was just kind of like plotting in its own different ways. Like, season 4 of MLP and Ruby were both, like, weird filler transitionary kind of seasons. And it's like, they didn't really get their legs until the end, and then, hey, you're finally in a place where you can, like be a show again. So I've got to go back. I haven't rewatched through the entire series in a while, and of course, it's coming from someone who hasn't even technically gotten to season 7 yet. Just watching the totally awesome recaps, man. Maybe that's why I like DWK. Is he's so similar in just growing up in California in the 90s. It really was its own kind of culture. I think of movies like Falling Down, and how just the concrete jungle of LA, or you think of Predator 2, movies like that. That was my experience growing up. You have that sort of air of smog in the air that's sort of giving that thin gray haze to everything, and you have that sweltering dry heat on everything. It's just it's a weird sort of nostalgia, that relatability, that it really is just its own sort of culture. And anyway, yeah, so I really like his perspectives he brings to a lot of things, because he does feel like a kindred spirit in that sense. Yeah, so okay, between these 3 videos now, I think we're at a 40-minute mark. So that might be where I cut it off for good, or maybe I'll add another segment after this. We'll see. But for now, I think I'm going to stop it. Oh, hold on a minute. I thought of one more thing I wanted to comment on regarding current events. North Korea, can you not? Can you really please not? Because this is sort of can you not? I really, really don't want an actual nuclear war or anything like that, because that would really, really suck. So, what I've read, at least regarding the current American military geopolitical positioning, is that, here's what all the chess pieces look like on the board, is that China is distant enough from North Korea where they're okay, if North Korea, you fire at the Guam first, then hands off, man, you're on your own. And then, of course, if we attack North Korea first, which I don't want, not even remotely, no preemptive strike, please, then China gets involved. Then China comes to their defense, because they do have a mutual defense pact with North Korea. That's it's one of the last vestiges of the Cold War that's sort of still at play right now. And no one talks about it, but the Korean War was very, very deadly. A lot of people died on all sides. And, I mean, people think about Vietnam because there was more TVs and coverage and everything. And, of course, World War II was much worse just coming off of that. But the Korean War was a horrible conflict that's technically still going on. So can you not, please? First of all, there's no way they hit Guam. It's yeah, Guam is probably their closest primary target, and it's not going to make it to Guam, Maine. I'm sorry to say this. There's so many interceptor systems. I mean, the entire Pacific is just covered in interceptor systems. I mean, the last 10 months, ever since the election, it's been one missile test after another, making sure that North Korea is under control. There's the Hawaii has a major launch site. There's the Kodiak Air and Space Center. There's Guam. I mean, Hawaii is almost, you could think of it like one big military installation. It's Guam, that's a whole nother level. The entire island is just one massive Air Force base and one massive Navy base. And that's the north and south side of the island. So, yeah, I mean, if they actually got something through and attacked Guam, that would be Pearl Harbor too. But the difference is, we already have the nukes, and it might not be a nuclear response, though. Here's something interesting I read. I'm trying to remember what site. It might have been an AP article, Associated Press, talking about how current positioning in tactical global response to North Korea is actually B-1 Lancers. The Rock Bell... No, that's... That's Full Metal Alchemist, not Rockwell, like the oil guy. I think it's Rockwell B1 Lancers. What's interesting about those, and it's something that I guess in the subtle military and State Department channels they've tried to emphasize, is that the Rockwell Lancers, the B1s, they don't carry any nuclear weapons. They're a strictly strategic non-nuclear bomber, which is very key positioning because they're trying to emphasize the fact that we can stop North Korea without the use of nukes, because in reality we don't. I mean, what's the point of dropping a thermonuclear bomb on Pyongyang or one of their little missile sites somewhere? It's like, I mean, the country they're all slaves. They're all, just the people, having to bow down to dear leader because they've got this cult of personality that's 3 generations long now. I mean, it's sort of like a monarchy. It's just like, and of course they are to some extent very cult-like, and I'm sure if we went back to full conventional war, like the DMZ became a new hot battlefield, yeah, there would be totally a lot of North Korean troops fighting because they are still in that Korean War mindset too. So, but it would be awful, and I don't want to see them dead. I want to see them be free, hopefully, or something someday. I just like... So I really actually doubt we would ever nuke North Korea, unless if they did get a nuke on Japan or, well, yeah, Japan or South Korea or Guam, then yeah, they get fucking obliterated. But ideally, it'd be great if that not happened, please, because we could glass the entire fucking country in a heartbeat. I mean, here's the thing, it's like, to really understand the nuclear triad, you have to think of all 3 spikes of the nuclear triad. First, you have the missile silos, which are all over the central U.S., and, of course, the point of them was ground-based strategic positioning. And, of course, these are all ICBMs designed to hit Russia, originally, and kind of China, too. Like, they were never as much of a threat, of course, but it's like, so they can all go, like 10,000 miles. Like, it can hit any place in North Korea from Wyoming or from freaking Minnesota or something. So yeah, no, don't do that. And they could be there in like 15 minutes. But then more realistically, or more tactically, you've got all of these U.S. What are they? SSBM, the Boomer submarines, which are the nuclear ones that have the Trident II missiles in them, and yeah, each of those has like 24 tactical nuclear warheads, and I think each of those Trident II missiles have like a 5,000-mile range or something ridiculous like that. So there's probably one of those in the Sea of Japan right now, or whatever. They all do their, deterrence patrols, which basically means, like, we have a launch system everywhere, don't fuck with us. So there's that. That would probably be the thing that brought the country to the ground. And in fact, if you've ever seen Ghost in the Shell, the second season, second gig, at the end of the arc with what's his name and all their whole like breakaway people on that like artificial island, that was a whole plot point. Is yeah, the American Empire nuclear submarine there, that was the key, is the submarine. Because of course there are the planes too. The third part of the triad is like the B-52s, which would drop gravity bombs, or like the B-2 stealth fighters, which they could have gravity bombs and air-launched missiles. So, there's a lot of, like, kill factor things here. But anyway, the point of all that is like, those all exist, and if they actually got a nuke off at Guam or Japan, it would be a wasteland for, however many years, and probably that would end with China and the Allies drawing up a new border between the Republic of Korea and China, whatever would work best for China. It would probably be, if that happened, most likely, that choke point in the middle. And I don't know, like, what towns in North Korea cross there, but, like, the smallest possible land border between China and the rest of the peninsula. That's probably where it'd be drawn if I were to be guessed, because that's the whole point of China maintaining the Korean, like, border zone in the first place, was they didn't want all of South Korea and, you know, all the American troops right there on their border, which is understandable, you know, like, we never went full MacArthur solution, which was tactical nuking and, you know, sort of stopping the communist Chinese in their tracks before they really got anywhere, but it's too complicated. Russia, they already had plenty of positioning, and so it's probably good we didn't do that. And then, but yeah, so now we know on China's part that if they did launch first, then they wouldn't respond. And I really doubt we do a first strike, because, especially with that China thing, because it's kind of a big deal, and that would be World War III. But that is interesting if, as an answer to, like, say North Korea did fire off a missile toward Guam, like really trying to hit Guam, and it gets intercepted, so, you know, that's a major deal, and the immediate response then would be the B-1 Lancers from Guam and probably Japan, like Yokosuka Air Base, or, I don't know if there's, most of them are, no, Yokosuka is the Navy base. There's some Air Force base in Japan where they got lots of crap. So anyway, or even Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, or Hickam Field. The great thing about the B-1s is that they intentionally, in the 90s, made it so they were non-nuclear bombers. They only carry conventional type warheads and missiles. And so that's sort of tactical positioning. And so it's like, okay, we answer your intercepted attack on Guam with bombing all of your missile sites, and then probably Pyongyang, the capital, and whatever other, like, North Korea, like, you know, like their escape stronghold is, where they put little Kim when they can't get to them, which is most likely some kind of, like presidential or deer leader bunker in their super deep subway system, because they've got the main Pyongyang subway is like 300 or 350 feet underground, like a solid 100 meters underground, which is actually very smart. I mean, that's like the Russian metro, the metro games, which is, yeah, you've got a nuclear war, so you might as well have all these carved out tunnels underneath ground as a shelter, because even though fallout's great, most nuclear weapons won't have that much fallout to, like, salt the earth for an indescribable amount of time. Most nuclear weapons, like H-bombs and stuff, it's all blast, no contamination area. That was actually one of the good things about hydrogen bombs, is that they consume all of their fissile products very quickly, because you only have enough, like, uranium or plutonium to fire the fusion atomic trigger, so you get all boom, all, like, you know, 10 megatons or whatever of boom, and then it just, you know, it fades away. You still have some fallout, but it's not like Hiroshima or Nagasaki, that's for sure. Which is just the perfect anniversary for all this to be going on, isn't it? It's just... So anyway, so if a nuke got intercepted by one system, a THAAD, like the South Korea THAAD, you know, catches it right in the air before it could even touch Guam, then you've got those B-1s to launch near operations. And then really, what happens after that, that is where all the questions lie. Okay, so all the missile sites are destroyed. China's like hands off because they shot first. So likely what happens, and this is already in place, China has all their standing army at the North Korea border, just in case. And they've got their tanks and whatever. So they would monitor the situation, or they could move in to start cleanup as likely as soon as the DMZ gets crossed and allied, like, ROK forces start moving in too, because then it is dealing with, like, command and control. It's taking possession of the land and, you know, flushing the rest of them out of the metro and dealing with the people and getting them located somewhere else. And, yeah, that's a whole thing. It would take who knows how long, years. You know, what percent of them want to go to China because they're closer to communist? What percent of them want to go to Korea because they're Korean and I don't know, family ties. It would just be a massive, horrible mess. And it's like, there's no good answer. It's like, because you do have like 3 generations of people that have lived under this now, but at the same time, it's like that they've lived under it and they're just like dealing with it. It's like, it's sort of like the Soviet Union, where basically just like counting the hours, or China. It's like, you know, at what point do they finally break internally where it all breaks down? So with Russia, realistically, what that breakdown was Afghanistan, which is they used up so many resources in Afghanistan that they couldn't maintain the whole of the USSR, which was a union of all the different Soviet Socialist republics. So then, when they couldn't exert enough control, then you have things like the Romanian Revolution, where they kill the president on Christmas Day and you know, free Romania. And Moscow was just too weak to fight to maintain it. So the rest of it just sort of broke down, and then the Russian Federation sort of reformed itself too and became more free. If you want to see something interesting, there was a Metallica concert in Moscow in like, I think 1991, and it wasn't just Metallica, it was a whole bunch of like Western music and things, and it was basically them like coping, or adjusting to post-communism, where it's like now you can enjoy these like Western things. It's fascinating, some of the interviews and like the just the setting for it is, and it's Metallica, so it's a fun set. Yeah, so that would be, I mean, it's not, you know, 100 million people, but I mean, it's still like, I think it's like 10 or 20 million North Koreans, so it's a massive amount of people that are either dead from one reason or another, or they fight to the death, or then they get relocated somewhere, and it's just, it would be such a complicated situation, and a good portion of them would see it as like wish fulfillment of the U.S. imperialism that they all fear, which is somewhat justified. It's like, so there's no good way to do that. You just kind of wait for them to change themselves. And yeah, so really hoping nothing happens, and it's all just saber rattling and North Korea, you know, doing their thing and stuff. And yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm really hoping that I don't then come back on one of these and it's like, okay, so now post-strike, this is what we're talking about in terms of the future, in terms of what's probably going to play out in this new lovely world. And it's like, that would suck too if it were Guam that got hit. It's like, you know, they didn't do anything. They're just Guam. They're just being Guam. And you know, the people they're great, and they're like sort of American. You know, it's like, it's one of those like holdover like territorial possessions, and they're just kind of chilling. It's just like Puerto Rico. It's like I think they've had referendums about like statehood, and they just kind of stay as like what is the proper term? It's like associated territories or some crap like that. But we would keep them safe, and we would keep them safe at all costs. So we'll yeah, we'll see what happens with North Korea. Yeah, should be fun. And in the meantime, I'll keep writing my fictional nuclear horse stories. And we'll just see where all that goes. So, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this first well, it's not really the first Patreon SkyBlog, because I did have all the podcasty type ones that are just audio. But, yeah, I'll see what any visual things I do sprinkle in here to make it more interesting. Okay? So, we love you guys, you patrons, and we will talk to you more later.